Okay, it's 9 o'clock on January 28th, 2021. This is the Policy Procedure Committee meeting. Call the roll, please, Amanda.
Oates?
Here.
Bard?
Here.
Awful? Here. Young?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Have a copy of the agenda in front of you. Is there a motion to approve? This is awful, second by Mr. Young. Are there any questions or comments on the agenda? Only one I have is part about going into executive session. I don't have anybody lined up for that for today, so we're not going to do that. But I don't think we need to change the agenda. We'll just skip it. That being the case, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion is carried. Is there any public comments? Seeing none, the committee chair reports. This is awful health.
Yeah, we're having our usual meeting.
Okay, Mr. Bard, tax.
Yes, so, as the usual, and I think Mr. Yerkler wants to bring up the, starting discussion on penalties for not filing for, building permits.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Young.
Just the regular reports.
Okay. Mr. Hall.
Transportation,
Yes.
they had the letting for contracts yesterday. Our meeting will consist of finalizing those successful contracts. I don't know of anything else.
Okay, very good. I'll forego any comments I have for the present. On to EMA, Mr. Stacy.
For the past month, the EMA has been consumed with one, working on the ILCAT, that is the Illinois Capability Assessment and THIRA tool. That's one of the requirements that we need to complete. Our deadline was January 15th. Statewide got moved to March 15th by the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, which we appreciate, giving us more time to make better products. So we're working on that. After that, we will be revising the county emergency operations plan. Besides that, EMA is also doing everything it can to assist the Iroquois County Public Health Department with vaccination clinics, whether that be mostly contacting and getting together numbers for phase 1 and 1B entities. And that's pretty much what EMA has been doing.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
What's the procedure for these vaccinations? Can you just give us a rough rundown on that?
Sure. Specific to scheduling?
Yeah, how do
Specific to-
people schedule an appointment?
Sure. Right now, we're in phase 1B. And what that means is there's a number of different types of entities that apply, such as schools, emergency responders. The health department is contacting those people through their employer. So if someone is an emergency responder or works for a school, we contact their employer and work through them. And then for people that are 65 and older, just in the general public, they need to wait until we have vaccine available. And when we do have vaccine available for 65 older in the public, we put out a press release. At that time, people can call the health department office to schedule an appointment.
Okay, that was a question on that would be available. I've been asked several times about it.
We've been asked a few million times.
Yeah, I'm sure you have.
Vaccine supply is limited when we don't know how much we'll get week to week. When we have some available and we're able to schedule a clinic and get it all logistically arranged, we put out a press release. We push it out as quick as we can.
Okay.
I've had several people contact me also that are over 65. When they call in, they found that space is already taken up. The only thing I can tell them is to keep trying. I think that's the byword for everybody that wants to get a vaccination, is to keep trying. Okay, next on the agenda, Discussion and approval of the microbrewery application for a microbrewery over there in our, it's not in Artesia Township, is it?
No, but
They
it's,
call it Artesia Brewery.
yeah, it's in Ridgeland.
We've had this, we've had, Taman's have been there before, we've had, we have an ordinance now in place for their microbrewery, and they've gotten to the point now, I believe they've got their federal permits, but they need to get the state permits in order to get going, and they can't get those until they get a county liquor license, and so that's what they're applying for here. And Brian has the details on that.
So, yeah, they've applied, provided their bond and the liquor licensing fee. Sheriff Hagan, I forgot this earlier when I talked to you, John. Sheriff Hagan hasn't gotten back to me on the background check, but if that comes back okay, then we have everything we need in order to proceed forward with their request for the liquor license.
So what we can do this morning is entertain a motion to approve their application pending receipt of the sheriff's background check.
So moved.
Second? Young? Any questions or comments on this?
Has Sheriff Hagan indicated how long his background check will be?
Well, he actually indicated that I talked to him on the phone one day this week, I forget what day it was, and he indicated that he was going to be sending me confirmation of it as soon as we got off the phone, and he didn't, so I need to get back to him on that.
I'm gonna be meeting with him shortly after this meeting, so I can bring it up and remind him again.
Okay, I'll send him an email too,
Yeah.
so.
Do they have a projected start date?
They want to get started as soon as possible, but if we wouldn't have had to wait to get this license approved, then they would have been applying to the state and ASAP, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to say how long it'll take with the state. There are a lot of things at the state right now that are really messed up. I applied for my FOIA card a year ago. Sent them the money. I've never gotten the card back, but yesterday I got a letter from them saying that my current card is extended for 18 months or something like that. Why can't they just send me the new card? I got everything done. Money, the application, the picture, they just need to print the card and send it. So, they're messed up pretty good over there, so, okay. We need to call a roll for this one? I don't believe so. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next on the agenda is discussion and action on the county code section on ETSB hiring of personnel. I have the county code book here. One of the things in our county code that we need to change is on page CD 12:4. Talks about the powers and duties of the ETS board. And number 5 says hiring on a temporary basis any staff necessary for the implementation or upgrade of the system. And this was back in, this part of the code was done back in 2014. And since that time, while the state had changed the law on that, and they've removed the word temporary. So we need to, as a result of some things that happened at the last meeting of the Judicial Committee, we need to get our county code book changed so that everybody's happy. 50 ILCS 750/15.4, paragraph B, number 5. In the state statute says hiring any staff necessary for the implementation or upgrade of the system. There's nothing in there about temporary. And that's the current state statute, that's what we have to go by. So we need to change our county code to eliminate the temporary part. I believe the right way that we probably should do this is to pass a motion indicating that and asking the state's attorney to make the correction in the county code.
By ordinance.
So that's kind of where we're at and what we need to do, so. Okay? Does anybody have any questions on that?
Would you read that again, what they want to change it to?
Right now, excuse me, right now it says, in our county code book, it says hiring on a temporary basis. Any staff necessary for the implementation or upgrade of the system. In the state statute right now, 50 ILCS 750/15.4, paragraph B, number 5, it states, hiring any staff necessary for the implementation or upgrade of the system. In other words, there's no reference in the current state statute to the temporary. I'm not even sure where that came about or came from because back, it was there 5 or 6 years ago, I know, because I saw it then. And then raised a big question mark in my mind as to, well, what do you do? Temporary will hire you for 2 months and then hire you again. I mean, that's kind of silly. And if it doesn't allow for permanent hiring, it certainly is improper, ineffective, whatever you want to call it. So anyway, this came up at the judicial meeting, and just to be exactly perfectly correct, that's what we need to change. So that's what we want to do. So we're looking to get a motion to make that change and sending it to the state's attorney for his approval and correction.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'm second.
Are there any other questions on what this covers? Seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion passes. Let me get back to where I am here. The next one on the agenda is the discussion and action on residency requirements for elected and appointed county officials. This is a subject that also came up at the last judicial meeting. I'll be very honest with you and say that from the research I've done, the only elected official that's required to reside in the county is the sheriff, according to the state statute. On the other hand, there is the part that in order to run for elected office, you have to reside in the district or the county in which you're running. And I think it's expected that you would continue to live there. As far as appointed officials is concerned, there really isn't anything that I can find anywhere that says in black and white where they have to live. I will tell you that in this county, we do have one department head that does not reside in the county and hasn't for a long time. As far as I know, he never has. But that being said, I think it's probably it's on my mind or my heart, and I imagine all of us, that any of our elected or appointed officials would live in the county. For one thing, they're closer to the places of employment, their responsibilities, in the case of any emergencies, that kind of thing. I think the compensation that they receive for their job, property taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, anything that they do keeps that revenue inside the county, which is again something that I think is important to all of us. So that being said, I think that we have a strong preference, but I cannot find any place where it specifically states where any of these officials have to reside. So, do you have anything on that, Adrian, that you want to add?
Just that, to my knowledge, if you are elected to a position and move out of the district that you were elected into, you lose your position. So elected officials would have to live in the county.
Well, I can't find that except for the sheriff.
Right, except that the law is if you move out of the district that you are elected to, you lose your position.
For a county board member, it says that.
For any elected position.
I've never-
Like, we're having a situation with a Watsika alderman right now that is on the ballot, that currently is serving, that if he doesn't live in the district, if you move out of district, you lose your ability to serve.
Does he have to be a resident of the district for 1 year before the election?
Well, that one I'm not 100% sure on. Some of them you have to be, some of them you don't have to be a resident of the district, but for a particular amount of time.
When it comes to appointed officials, there really isn't anything.
Appointed, no, I don't know of anything. I think it's based on county ordinance.
Well, I'm not aware of any county ordinance that covers that either.
I do
And
not know of
Like I
one.
said, I know of one department head that does not live in the county. I wouldn't want to force him to live in the county, to be honest with you, because we need that individual in this position, so. And I think that's kind of where it leaves you. I think that, if you have a strong preference that people reside in the county, but if you have an absolute requirement that they live in the county, you kind of box yourself in. Because if there's somebody that you want to have in that position, and for whatever reason don't live in the county, you box yourself in by not being able to have them employed. All things said, I think that we can make a statement that we have a strong preference for people who reside in the county. But as far as that being an absolute, I don't see where we either have the authority or that would even be a wise thing to do. Anybody else have any thoughts that they want to add to that?
Yeah, there's nothing down black and white in paper, why that's not the way it has to remain. Said if there's no ordinance.
Well, like I said, I know in this county right now, this is where we have an individual that does not reside in the county.
Yeah.
So if we pass that ordinance, that individual isn't gonna move to this county, I'm almost sure. I mean, I can't speak for
We'd
him.
be up the proverbial heat.
But even if that were the case, my point is that you are still boxing yourself in and limiting yourself by having that requirement. So I don't know what action we can take on this. I know it came up with judicial and it was referred to this committee. And I just don't know what to do with it beyond what I'm saying I found out by looking at it. So forth. I'm open to any comments or suggestions that anybody has if they think there is something that we need to do, or ought to do, or whatever.
I don't think there's anything we can do. I mean, like you say, in the future, if you hire someone that is appointed, one of the things you might tell them is that we prefer you live in the county, but as it stands now,
And I have a strong preference that they do live in the
yeah,
county. I
that's
think
what
all
I
of
have,
us-
yeah. But that's in the future, but right now, why, having no ordinance,
You're
per
right
se,
now,
why, it's a moot point, I guess.
we can enact an ordinance.
Well, then we lose. About the only ordinance you could enact is that they have to live in the county, or else you enact an ordinance they can live wherever they want. That wouldn't be a big one either, so.
Well, I just think it's something that,
I was this brought up in judicial anyway, what was the reason for it?
I'd only be guessing as to why it was brought up there. I guess we'd have to talk to the individuals that brought it up. But, you know, it could be a personal matter, I don't know. But, in any event, it came up and it was referred to this committee. I was at the judicial meeting, and when it was referred to this committee, I just said, well, thanks.
Pass the buck.
All right. So, you know, to
I
me,
say just leave things the way they are for now.
I think that's probably the best
Yeah.
thing to do.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. Next on the agenda is preliminary discussions regarding county board redistricting and setting county board salaries, required to be completed by July 1st. I think you've got a number of papers in front of you that cover this subject. Maybe we can go through them. Most of these papers, if not all of them, go back 10 years ago, when, even, I guess 20 years ago. That we can look at and use as to what happened when this comes up every 10 years. So in 2010 and in 2000, or 2000, the times that it came up, we can use this as a guide as to the way that it was conducted and handled and so forth. Basically, it's a situation that occurs every 10 years where the county is required, because we're under a township form of government, we're required to, based upon the census, we're required to redistrict so that each county board district is approximately equal in population. And at the same time, we have the opportunity to set the salaries for the county board members, for the chairman, and for the vice chairman. I know there have been some times when other counties have changed some of those salaries within that 10-year frame, but it's my feeling that doing it every 10 years is probably the proper way to go. There was one piece of paper that Jill got for me, and I guess I have it here, about the salaries for the county board chairman in other counties.
Do you want to make copies?
I guess if we can get a copy from the other committee members. What that'll show you as far as the salaries for the county board chairman goes is that there are other counties like Ford County where the county board chairman there gets a salary of $7,500 a year. Vice chairman gets nothing. In our county right now, the chairman gets $4,800 a year, and the vice chairman gets $80 a month, which is $960 a year. There are some counties where the county board chairman gets practically nothing. There's other counties where the county board chairman gets six figures. Some of that probably depends upon the size of the county, the amount of money that they got, and whatever they choose to do. We can use some of that information as a guide, but as far as any final decision that is made on the matter, I think that's something that's up to us. One thing that I'd like to point out about this also is that 10 years ago, the county board chairman appointed a special committee to study this matter and make recommendations. The committee that he appointed was composed of members from each of the various county board districts. I'm not sure that I want to go that route, and for one reason is that on this committee we've got representation from every county board district. So I'm not sure what we'd be accomplishing by appointing a special committee. We go through this thing and make recommendations. I think it's still going to be up to the county board to, make the final decision anyway. So at the present time, I'm not planning to appoint a special committee to study this thing. It may mean a little more work for some of us, but still not gonna not of the opinion that we should do that. So, if any of you disagree with that, you're free to voice your opinion.
I'm okay with that.
What else can I tell you? We don't have the report back from the census people yet, so we don't know, as far as redistricting the county goes, we don't know, where that's all gonna go.
Can I touch on that? Looking at the census website, those numbers won't be available until March, according to their release dates. But the spreadsheet that I put in front of you shows their estimates for the last 10 years. So you get kind of a feel, but March is the projected date for that.
Every time I talk to you, you keep pushing that date.
Unfortunately, I was able to find it on the census website, and I was kind of sad. Because December is when we should have had it.
Yeah.
That's this piece of paper here. I suppose that's something we could use as a guide. Basically, what it comes down to is that we should be trying to rearrange the districts according to population so that they're all approximately the same. If we really come to a point where it's almost impossible to do that, I believe we have the authority to split a district or split a township, but I think we prefer not to do that. So I think bearing that in mind, that should guide our thinking as to how we're going to approach this. One of the things that we probably need to keep in mind, and I don't know at what point we want to make this decision, but this is something that also plays into it, and that is, do we want to change the number of districts? Right now we have 4. 10 years ago we had 5. 10 years ago there were 25 board members. It was decided to reduce to 20 and reduce the number of districts to 4. We're still having 5 from each district. Well, we can continue with the same arrangement that we have right now. We can reduce the size of the board. We could have 4 districts with 4 members from each district. We could have 3 districts with 5 members from each district. I mean, there's a various number of possibilities that we can do here. And I think some of it may require a little bit of study on our part. Obviously, if we reduce the number of board members, we're reducing some of the county's cost in operating this board. You can make the argument that we have some individuals on the board right now that aren't very active. Some aren't really active at all. And if those people were, let's say, not on the board anymore, if we reduce the size of the board, we'd probably still be able to function every bit as well as we can right now. But I guess the main question is, like most of our committees have 7 members, we really need to have 7 members on every committee. Maybe 5 is enough. Probably an odd number is good, because then when you vote, you're not likely to wind up with a tie. But maybe those are things that we need to be thinking about. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up today, because, we have to get this done by July 1st. That means we have to approve it at the June board meeting. So, here we are now, February. We need to start thinking pretty seriously about all these different issues. Some of the things about the salaries for the county board members, for the chairman and vice chairman, are things that we don't need to wait for the census to start dealing with. Some of those things might depend upon what we anticipate the budget might allow going forward, and what some of our preferences are in that respect.
Do we have an idea of which counties might be the same amount of people as Iroquois is? Or do we have to search all that?
One of the things that we looked at had some of these counties listed by population as well, but this doesn't have that.
No, I can add it to it,
I think
and
that might
get
help.
that to everybody.
Yeah.
Get an idea of what they're paying, you know, if it's got the same size or close to the same size as our county.
And some of these, you need to look at, like, for example, when you look at Ford County, they don't show you what the annual salary of the chairman is, but it's $625 a month and $7,500 a year. And I did talk to the chairman of Ford County, and she verified that.
And they're smaller than Iroquois?
They're about half the size.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but you can see on this, counties that are probably equal in size to us or close to it, and there's just no correlation to it, but we should be able to get some idea from looking at this as to what some of the other counties do have, and I think your point about population probably would be helpful. If we look at some of these also, not only the population of the county, but their location in the state would give some idea of their economic status as well. So, some of these counties may be able to afford more than what others can. So these are the things that we need to be thinking about. You've got quite a few papers here to look at and study. My hope is that when we have our next meeting, which is February 25th, that we can start getting specific on some of these things. And what Brian just told us is that we're not going to know what the census numbers are then, so we probably can't do much about the redistricting part, but we ought to be able to start focusing maybe on the salary issues, get some of that. If we can get some of that out of the way, then when we get the census numbers, maybe that'll fall into place and so forth. Before we know it, it'll be June. It ain't cold outside today, but time goes by pretty quick. All that makes sense to anybody? Is there any questions as to what we're looking at doing here? How we want to approach this thing? Think we're approaching it the right way? Okay. That being said, I guess we can move on to the next item on the agenda then, which is an update on the sexual harassment training. You got something for us on that, Jill?
Yes. I went ahead and released, reset the dates for everybody on their online training and sent that to all the department heads as well as the county board members. I have had several that have completed it and turned it in already. And again, if we want to do an in-person training, I would suggest, after the audit, please. So early summer, we could set something up possibly to do some in-person training for those that would rather do it that way, that's fine.
So we'd be doing that in March or April then?
Mhm.
Probably April,
That'd be fine, we can set something up.
for anybody that wants to do it in person.
But I do wanna commend some of the department heads for, you know, getting a head start and getting some of those already completed and turned into me, so.
Okay, anybody have any questions or comments on that?
Is that for the 2021 or what about 2020? Is that already taken care of?
That's already done. We're on to 2021.
We didn't get everybody done in 2020, but we're done. We're
No, we ended up with, 14 people that we didn't get done. Mostly, those 14 that didn't get done were appointed for part-time employees.
You know, I don't have anybody ready for the executive session today, so we're going to forego that. We'll get back on that next month. I don't have any appointments yet that I know about. Correspondence, have I got any of this correspondence here? That this is, and this is. This is other what about this? Are you doing that or is finance doing
That's from last month. We already approved it. Just need your signature.
that? Okay, that's what I thought. So we don't have any claims for today. Is that right, Mr. Stacy? You didn't spend any money?
Well, I'm not gonna promise that. No, the only money that I would have spent this month is the normal phone bill, and I'll have that sent to finance.
Okay. Is there any old business to come before the committee today? Is there any new business? We have representatives from the insurance company here to speak to us today.
This is Tim Drury. He's the risk manager for Bliss McKnight. We discussed a few things that I invited him and talked to Joe. We had put on the agenda to discuss some things for the county.
Yeah, I was the guy who came and did a lot of sexual harassment training, so I'm not going to talk about sex this morning. So we have a new administration. A new presidential administration means changes. We don't have a crystal ball, but we know that there's going to be different agendas and different things are going to be important to this administration or different directions. For instance, right now the current administration has put a freeze on any proposed or pending regulations, which meant, for instance, OSHA regulations, some safety regulations are just stopped. We don't know exactly whether they will move forward. On the other side of it, OSHA was directed to enact emergency temporary standards called ETS to develop those standards which would have the strength of being a formal regulation. And these ETS are going to be specifically related to communicable diseases, COVID. And the deadline for those regulations, those ETS, to be developed would be March 15th. So we could actually be hearing that there would be an employer mandate for various sectors, for instance, to be wearing masks. That's a guess that some people are making. But we don't know yet if that's going to be happening. So that's something that we'll need to keep you guys informed on. If there are changes that will affect you in terms of the county as an employer, what things do you need to do? There have been, depending on who you talk to, Illinois, as part of the one of the executive orders, Executive Order 2020-43, which was passed on June 26th, referred to the Department of Economic and Community Affairs guidelines. Some of those guidelines those guidelines said that employers should do COVID-19 training for employees when they return to work. Either they were remote employees or perhaps they were sick. As you know, there have been a lot of arguments that executive orders didn't carry the weight of regulations and laws. I'm not going to get into that. What I will tell you is we have an online training module that lasts about 36 minutes, which would be available to the county if different departments or people were interested in just getting that training. That's free. So even if you're just interested and you want to take a look at that, that's available. Again, it might be something, I don't have a legal opinion, it might be something that the county does for employees, if you had any remote employees, or if you had employees who had COVID and then returned to work. Maybe that department would benefit from that type of training. I went to the bathroom before the meeting and saw that there was a IDPH poster in there. Those are the types of things that you're required to do. It seems like you're up to date on that. I haven't gone in every bathroom in the place, but that would be the types of things that we want to see. Some other issues. There were some laws. These are interesting times because we had things that took place, and as you said, for instance, you didn't get your card, but they just said, well, we're going to renew it. There were cases that were passed that happened in 2020, and they have importance for employers. And there are some things that we ought to possibly take a look at. We probably could look at your any anti-discrimination policies just to make sure that they're up to date. There were some cases that said that sexual harassment, discrimination could happen to anyone because of gender differences. I brought it up in some of the sexual harassment training. So we just want to make sure maybe that the language of your any harassment language that you had dealing with sexual harassment discrimination is fine. I think we actually did, and I think it's okay, but I would want to take a look at that again maybe. Drug testing probably ought to be just taking a look at to make sure you don't have any language that's not compliant. Leave policies, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act sunsetted at the end of 2020. Again, we expect new legislation to be proposed by the new administration. Don't know what that's going to be or what it's going to say. One of the things that I wanted to offer to you is we have a very good, IT folks say robust. It has a lot of good information. We have a website called Practical HR, and what I could propose that you would do, especially for this committee, it's available to everybody in the county, but it would probably be something that everybody, at least here on this committee, would be signed up for. You'd get an email every week, and it would have links to 4 or 5 or 6 articles to keep you up to date as those new legislation comes out. I read all that stuff. After I talked to Myron, I've read a whole bunch of crap stuff, and tried to distill it down and say, okay, what is it? What are the important things I need to talk to you? I think the main thing I want to say to you now is we're trying to keep on top of it. Things start changing quickly. As they change, Myron and I will get with the county to let you know about how those things change. But I really think you would benefit from getting those articles emailed to you. It's once a week. It's not more than that. I understand if people don't want any more email in their inboxes, so I'm not trying to fill your inboxes up with junk. But if that's something that you'd like, I can certainly go ahead and take care of that for you. I do want to just touch on the sexual harassment. That's something we are going to, every employer has to do every year, not to take the air out of that, but there's no one auditing that. So no one's going to show up, at least currently, no one's going to show up and knock on the county's door and say, did you miss 14 people last year? And there's also no teeth in that legislation that says that the negative fallout is a fine or non-compliance. Where that could turn out negative or bite the county is if there was a file or an allegation of sexual harassment or discrimination. One of the first things that a plaintiff's attorney will do is say, is the county complying with the training that you need to do? And I think being able to say, how many employees do you guys have?
We did 172 last year, and there was 14 that did not get done.
Quite honestly, I think it's commendable.
Yeah, we had over a 91% completion rate.
Yeah. I don't think we insure a single county that had everybody make it. So, I mean, it's just, you also have new people coming, people come and going, part-time, full-time. So I think as long as the county continues to work hard to do that, get your compliance rate high, 100% might never be achievable. I mean, it might be. Go for it. And I'll do everything I can to help you guys do that. One of the things that happened is OSHA penalties increased as of January 15th. They didn't increase by much, but any time that penalties go up, I think employers should be aware of that. as we look at as we find this new legislation touching on employers, I'll get that out to you folks as soon as we possibly can. And anything that affects you, we'll tell you what you need to do. There is no crystal ball. We're trying to appreciate the work that the county's doing. In McLean County, we're having a devil of a time with vaccinations and websites crashing and lots of issues, which that's the world we live in right now. We're just trying to keep our heads above water. Any questions?
Didn't we, Joe, and maybe you can answer this, but didn't we make a decision sometime back here, not too far back, to have them go through our personnel policy manual?
We had, it was discussed that we were gonna go through it, and then it never got,
But I thought Myron told us that they could do that for us. And I thought we said we wanted to take advantage of that.
I think you guys were gonna review it
And
and then put notes on it and give it to us. I thought
Yeah.
that's what the agreement.
yeah.
Okay.
Because I had went through the first, I went through the first 10 or so pages and then, this ball got dropped somewhere, yeah.
Well, I guess it's something we'll try and get it on the agenda here pretty quick, so we can start going through some parts of it every month.
Mhm.
It'll take us a while to get through the whole thing, but
I don't believe it was that long ago. You guys did that
No.
anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe.
it's about 6 or 7 years ago. that it was done.
And while giant legislation didn't pass, there were some case laws that changed some, particularly in the areas of discrimination, that would have affected the county. But this new administration is probably going to be looking at making some changes that might have some bigger impact on you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your coming today. We had to get up early and negotiate all that cold weather.
My wife is a nurse, so she gets up early all the time, and she's real happy. She got her second dose on Monday. I actually had COVID. I'm theoretically in the 90-day immunity zone, so I'm just hoping that we move quickly in McLean County and I can get a vaccine someday.
We're all in that same boat trying to
Yeah.
get everybody taken care of. Is there any other new business to come before the committee today? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Young, have a second? Mrs. Hoffman? All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned.
How much is,